Hi, this video assumes you already know the basics of how to Trolldier. If you don't, watch this video first, okay? Okay, so while we're doing the fancy SFM intro and all that, here is my first and best tip for how to do direct combat as Trolldier. Don't. Maybe that's a little reductive, but let me explain. Like most classes, as Trolldier, you're significantly stronger when someone doesn't notice you're there. The one exception to this rule being if it's funny for you to miss, and then this happens. Oh my god. Unlike most classes, though, you're significantly weaker when they know you're there. Aside from, like, Spy and Medic, most classes have excellent options for head-to-head combat, so in those situations, you've still got a fighting chance. In some cases, it's even easier to hit your shots when they're actively fighting you. I find this to be the case with pipes on demo, for example. Like, if they don't know you're there, it's just, look, it's hard-coded into the game. How else do you explain this? But back to my point. With most classes, even if the other player is on a class that soft counters you, there's still a chance you can come out on top because your damage options are varied enough that you can adapt. This is less applicable to Trolldier, and that's because our effective range for damage is literally just melee range. All anyone has to do to completely neutralize your kit is stay out of your melee range. So the best place for you to be at any time when setting up a garden is in a place where the enemy gamer can't see you. So you really shouldn't be trying to get into direct combat situations if you can at all help it. That being said, sometimes the other team has eyes. Sometimes their passive perception is above 5. Sometimes they're actively seeking you out specifically for the rest of the game because you got one garden that one time. Sometimes it just can't be helped. So in those situations, what do you do?
I don't know. Maybe try switching classes?
Shut up. Direct combat is Trolldier. That's this video. I've got a few techniques that are pretty easy to practice and improve at, and I'll be going over each of them. What they are, how to perform them, how to practice them, and when you should be using them in real games. Pretty straightforward stuff. But before we do that, sorry in advance, I want to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Factor. I don't know if it's just me, but grocery stores kind of stress me out. Maybe it's the parking lots always being a war zone. Maybe it's that strange grid-like structure with ceilings that are just a little bit too high. Maybe it's the crowds inside. Maybe it's that one person who just decides to park their cart diagonally across the entire aisle, blocking all traffic, while they spend the remaining time between now and the heat death of the universe deciding what brand of jarred pesto to buy. And if I say, excuse me, could you please move your cart so that I could get past? I'm somehow the bad guy here! Anyway, it's a bit of a tangent, but I don't like grocery stores, and luckily, Factor has taken that stress out of the picture completely. They deliver fresh, never frozen, pre-prepared meals straight to your door so that when I need to have food during the busiest, most stressful time of the year, I don't have to worry about grocery shopping, or anything else for that matter. No cooking, no mess, no sinks full of dishes, you just pop the meal in the microwave and it's ready to eat in 2 minutes or less. It's hard to overstate just how convenient Factor is. Okay, sure, but your next question probably is, how is the food? And like, yeah, you're getting food delivered. It makes sense to be skeptical here, but I'm happy to report that the food is great too. Factor offers an absurd amount of amazing chef-prepared and chef-quality meals covering a variety of dietary needs and preferences along the way. Keto? No problem. Vegan? Absolutely. Calorie smart? Factor's got you covered. And in case you're wondering, yes, they still have the truffle butter filet mignon. Honestly, I like cooking, but sometimes life just gets too busy. So if you're like me and your first thought is to spend too much money just getting takeout, consider trying Factor instead. I'm really glad that I did, and I think you will be too. Get 50% off and free shipping on your first Factor box using my link. You can click the link in the description or scan that QR code with your phone. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring the video, and now back to me in another voiceover. Okay, let's start with the most straightforward technique of them all, short hopping. That is what I call this extremely common technique that ends up being many Trolldier's bread and butter. There's probably another name for it out there somewhere, but I couldn't be bothered to find it, so I'm calling it a short hop. A short hop is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, a rocket jump that is way shorter than the basic one that you learn at Jump Academy. The only difference between it and a regular rocket jump is the timing of your inputs. With a normal rocket jump, you jump, crouch, and shoot all at the same time, and with a short hop, you jump and crouch at the same time, wait a beat, and then shoot. It works like this because of the way it is.
You can tell that it's
the source engine.
Because of the way it is.
Basically source engine physics. So imagine rocket knockback in this game like a number that gets added to your velocity. Let's just keep things simple and say 5. Don't tell your math professor, but we're not going to worry about units or anything right now. You get shot by a rocket while moving at a speed of 2, and to figure out what your velocity is now, you just add them together, right? So now your velocity is 7. The only issue now is that unlike speed, velocity is a vector. We got to think about direction too. So what if you were moving with a speed of 2, but in the other direction? So basically now your velocity is -2. You get shot by a rocket, add 5 for the knockback, and now both your speed and velocity are +3. This is basically how a short hop works. When you rocket jump normally, Additionally, the knockback hits you when you're moving up from your jump with space, so in the same direction as the knockback is taking you. That gets added to your total velocity and you go really high. With a short hop, we're waiting a bit to shoot so that gravity slows us down and eventually starts bringing us back in the other direction towards the ground. The knockback still gets added, but because it's fighting against your velocity instead of adding to it, you don't go nearly as high. Short hops can have varying heights, and it all really depends on how long you wait between crouch jumping and shooting. The longer you wait, the shorter you'll go. Then, just like any other garden, you immediately pull out your melee, stay crouched, and hit the enemy gamer before you hit the ground. And that's it. In a nutshell. To practice this, I'd recommend the obvious choice, TR Walkway. I've talked about this map a couple times already, so if you already know what it is and how to start it up, just skip to like this timestamp. Right, so TR Walkway is a community-created training map that puts a bunch of bots walking in a straight line along a walkway and adds some nice customizability to the area, letting you practice stuff like stair stabs, air shots, you know, whatever, you name it. To start it up, first download it and install it by dropping it into your maps folder like this. Open up the game and type this command into your console, and then type map space TR_walkway_RC2, and then hit enter. Give it a bit to load, join red team, and then you should be good to go. Practicing short hops on Walkway is a great way to just get a feel for the timing of the jump and then the subsequent shovel swing. Honestly, once you get into a groove, it's pretty relaxing. Like, I bet I could put this under some freebooting streamer clip farming type videos and nobody would know the difference.
I had a power thought the other day, and it really changed how I think about playing TF2. Like, basically, when you look at the culture of TF2 holistically, you know, each one of the hats and weapons in the game carries a kind of stigma with it, right? You know, like a stereotype. And so I thought, like, I want to share this knowledge with all of you, right? So in my new online course, TF2 hat stereotype.
In actual games, I don't actually use short hops as much as I probably should. I usually play Trolldier almost like Spy, where most of my kills come from showing up unexpectedly and gardening someone before they see me and before they can really react. And if I get caught, well, I just kind of like... But a lot of Trolldiers are way more aggressive than I am, and most of the time, they're going to be using this type of jump as the basic template for whatever they do. This is for good reason. Short hops are easier to control, faster to execute, and harder to react to. So if you want to take a more direct approach to Trolldier combat, this is probably what you're going to be using the most. The interaction will pretty much always come down to you trying to predict where the enemy gamer will be standing about a second into the future, jumping there, and then gardening them. Many people's first reaction to a Trolldier jumping straight at them is to back up, so a lot of the time this will be a little ways behind where they're standing right now. That being said, I made a bunch of videos about why that's a bad idea, and they got pretty popular, so sometimes you'll see people do the opposite and walk forward. If you think they're going to do that, what you can do instead is short hop in place like this. This ends up looking very silly if you're wrong, but if you're right, they end up running straight into your loving arms, which is also really silly. There's almost no wrong time to go for a short hop garden, with, you know, a few notable exceptions. But honestly, it's such a basic and common thing that if you don't know how to do it already, this is probably the next thing you should learn. It's kind of like if learning Trolldier was its own video game, like an RPG, the tutorial would teach you the fundamentals, like learn basic rocket jumping, learn basic shovel timing, learn to airstrafe, and then it just like sets you off into the wild and says like, good luck, idiot. Short hopping is the thing that the other players would tell you that you need to do next. Sure, it's not flashy like the other stuff at the end game, like ramp slides and sinks and B-hops and whatever the hell beggars jumping is, but it's good, it's simple, it's easy, and it will probably be the thing that gets you the most gardens in your entire playthrough of the game. That was the subject of this metaphor that's rapidly falling apart under my feet. A ceiling smash is a technique that involves, well, smashing your head on the ceiling really hard. It might cause some brain damage, but it's fine. You're playing Trolldier. You don't need that shit. It's more commonly used in advanced jump maps than it is in real games, and I couldn't tell you exactly how it works. I know it makes you fall faster, but if I had to guess further than that, I'd probably just say source engine nonsense and leave it there. Outside of jump maps though, you don't really see it used very often, but it does have one very niche use case for Trolldier, and that's using it as an alternative to a short hop. To perform a ceiling smash, just do a regular rocket jump indoors, but immediately pull out your shovel. If the ceiling is high enough, you should have just enough time to swing the shovel before you hit the ground. And that's it. Hello, SoundSmith from the future here. I'm here in this other voiceover to tell you that ceiling smashes, along with pretty much every other technique I'll talk about in this video, can be combined with short hops to cover a wider variety of situations. For ceiling smashes, it's mostly the situation where the ceiling is too low to get off a shovel swing before you hit the ground. See, at this spot, a regular rocket jump doesn't give me enough time to do the weapon switch animation, and I lose my crit before the swing goes off. But if I short hop, which causes my jump height to be lower overall, I have enough time. Just something to keep in mind that I forgot about when writing the original script. Okay, thanks, back to past SoundSmith. It's a bit harder to practice this outside of a normal game than short hopping is, mostly because the timing is going to be a little different depending on how high the ceiling you're smashing your head into is. It's very map dependent, so you might just have to go and practice in real games. But on TR Walkway, there is this retractable platform that you can adjust to your liking, and it ends up being the perfect way to initially get the hang of what it feels like. So the obvious question then is, why do this instead of a short hop? And I think the easiest way to answer it is to just show you what it looks like from the other person's perspective. Wow. Yeah, if the enemy gamer isn't expecting this, it looks weird as hell. It almost looks like you don't know what you're doing. Like, doing a regular rocket jump indoors? That's stupid. Right? But it's not, really. The time between jumping and shoveling is similar for you, probably a bit faster, but your speed and how you're moving is significantly different, which often throws people off. It's a mix-up, you know, like the thing that you pull out every so often instead of a short hop. But again, it's very heavily map dependent. Getting better with these past a certain point really just comes down to finding different spots on different maps that work well, and then mastering the timing for that specific ceiling height at that specific spot. I've got a few that I'll name right now, but there's definitely like hundreds more out there. On high tower, the ones I tend to use the most are the room in the upper battlement spawn and the room outside the lower spawn that has that one sentry spot. You can also get some really weird ones along the stairs right next to it. On upward, there's this overhang on the flank near first, this bridge near the big hill where you can catch people chasing you, and the stairs near the entrance to last. On process, there's this room on either side of mid, this room between second and last, and pretty much anywhere around the perimeter of last. And on Badwater, there's a ton of medium height ceilings that work perfectly. Like some spots in this building next to first, in this building where you can actually go up or down the stairs and have enough time to get off a swing before you hit the ground. And this building is fun for catching out scouts that really want you dead. Actually, that's a fun trick that I did with short hops too. So while we're on the subject, let's talk about fake retreats. I feel like this one needs a catchier name, but the only one that comes to mind is Lazy Purple calling it the "oh boy, I sure am running away" trick. See, here's the thing. If you consistently try to escape after a garden attempt, eventually the other team is gonna get sick of it. You're like a fucking mosquito, just So every once in a while, you can pull out this little trick. Jump away, act like you're going to retreat, and then when they chase you, immediately jump right back at them. If your jump is on target, this almost always catches people super off guard. Just, you know, don't do it a bunch of times in a row because eventually people will catch on to your nonsense. You fucker.
Air shot into grenade.
That's not, you know, I need footage of that. That's not fair. It's really more of a mind game than it is an actual physical technique you can try, but generally the best way to set one of these up is by either breaking line of sight, so like going around a corner and short hopping back, or jumping over an obstacle and then jumping back, or by jumping towards a place where you can easily jump again, but this time with a lot of horizontal speed. So you jump towards like a wall or a tall enough prop or something like that. The idea is to have the return jump be as fast as possible so they don't have enough time to react. For this reason, practicing and improving fake retreats is heavily dependent on experience and map knowledge. Try just firing up an offline server by typing the map name into your console and exploring a bit. Once you find a spot you like, you can practice getting the muscle memory down and then implementing it into a real game. Just be careful not to get too disrespectful with it, because this is the type of trick that will really make someone reconsider their class choice. Right, so you've probably heard of this one before. Market Gardener bee-hopping is a technique that, in very basic terms, tricks the game into thinking you're still in the air after you've already hit the ground. I think you know where this is going, right? The Market Gardener loses its ability to crit when you hit the ground after a rocket jump, but if the game never thinks you hit the ground, then... Contrary to what I said in an older video, I learned recently that it's actually not the same bug as bunny hopping or bounce hopping. These are 3 different bugs, even though they're performed basically the same way. Preserving crits on the Market Gardener works because of say it with me now.
A source engine.
In slightly less basic terms, TF2 constantly runs a check every tick or every 15 milliseconds to see if the player is touching the ground or not. If the check returns that the player is on the ground and they previously had the Market Gardener crit boost from blast jumping, it takes away that boost. And working as intended, the player would never be able to do something like preserving crits after landing because it happens every tick. Or at least, it's supposed to. See, the game also modifies the current server time to improve client-side interpolation, and thanks to some weird-ass interactions between that and the grounded check, what ends up happening is that the game really only checks to see if you're grounded every few ticks instead of every tick. So if you jump again in that small window of time, by the time the game checks again, you're already back in the air, and it thinks you never landed. This window can actually fluctuate depending on your connection, anywhere between 0 and 7 ticks. And yes, this does mean that if you're unlucky and it's offset by 0 or 1, preserving crits becomes impossible. And that's actually the reason B-hopping feels so inconsistent a lot of the time. Sometimes, if you're unlucky, it's just impossible. There's actually a giant document written by Ilput, nice, that talks about pretty much every movement-based mechanic and bug there is in TF2. It's where I got this information, see? Please don't kill me, H-Bomber guy. Anyway, the document is very in-depth. No, seriously, like, I don't know what any of this means. Why this shit written like a Harvard research paper? If that's your thing, I've linked it in the description. But I'm dumb and impatient, so let's move on to how you actually do the thing. To perform a B-hop, first rocket jump, let go of crouch instead of holding it, and then input a jump right as you're landing. If you did it right, your character will jump again, and like I said before, the game won't realize that you've landed. If you're using the rocket jumper, you can tell if this is the case because the jumper weapons play this sound while you're falling after a blast jump. So if that sound continues to play after you B-hop, that means the game thinks you're still blast jumping and you got the timing right. What the f is it? Huh?
What?
That was like 20 B. Why couldn't I get that in a real game? This is really hard to do with just the spacebar though, so I'd actually recommend rebinding your scroll wheel to jump with this command. Basically, it lets you fire off a ton of jump inputs really fast. You start scrolling right before you hit the ground, and then you jump on the first scroll input that happens once you touch the ground. This ends up being a much more consistent method of B-hopping, at least for me. Does that mean that according to some, I'm a fake Trolldier who can't actually B-hop and should be ashamed of myself? Maybe. But after lots of therapy and self-reflection, I've decided I don't care, and neither should you. Just use the scroll wheel, it's way easier. Okay, practicing B-hops. Walkway is, once again, the king here. There is one small issue with using an offline server, though. B-hop crits don't work on them by default. Yeah, it's probably because of the server clock thing I was citing earlier. If there's no ping, then the game always checks to see if you're grounded on the next tick. Maybe? Anyway, according to this dog with an egg on his head in the comment section of another video on B-hopping that I watched while doing research for this video, you can actually get around this by typing net fake lag 30 in your console. I tried it myself and... Oh, yeah, that was it. Thanks, man. Yeah, so just practice on Walkway until you get a feel for it and feel confident doing it in a real game. Speaking of real games, when do you use B-hopping? Well, it's really hard and not always consistent, so you probably shouldn't rely on it too much, but there are a lot of situations in which you could use it. The most common one, of course, is the situation that I like to call the I messed up my jump. Damn it. Well, that's the most common one for me anyway. In this situation, just let go of crouch, try for the B-hop, and if you hit it, great. And if you don't, you'll be able to hear that whooshing sound stop, so you'll immediately know to try something else. Some other common use cases are indoors, in tight corridors, as a way to get 2 quick garden crits on a heavy, or as an alternative to a short hop in place. You can even intentionally combo this with a regular short hop or a ceiling smash to make people think you messed up your jump and get closer. I've actually pulled off that trick quite a few times and... Oh, that last one didn't crit, but... I guess it still killed him. That counts, right? I mean, look, if it's stupid but it works, then it isn't stupid. There are plenty of times where you're thrust into a direct combat situation where you absolutely could get a kill if you just stick it out and smack him with your shovel. No rocket jumping required. Common situations I can think of where this is relevant, you've backed someone into a corner, you landed a garden on a full health soldier and they have 5 health, you messed up the timing on a light class but hit them once with a butter shovel instead of a crit, Or like if you're in a position where you think they're going to run away instinctively and you're standing between them and where they're going to run to, so like you're between a sniper and spawn, yeah, that works because they aren't actually out of your melee range by the time you can swing again. This is actually the situation where the Market Gardener's swing speed downside comes into play, but it's still only 20%. It's not that slow. Sometimes you can just smack them, and that's okay. You know, maybe they'll make fun of you in chat for it, but whatever. So, short hops, ceiling smashes, fake retreats, B-hops, butter shovels, lots of great tools here, but there's still one obvious problem. What if none of that works? What if they lock in, see you coming, and just, like, stay out of your melee range? Well, there is one other option. Look, at this point, it might be time to just swallow your pride and add some range to your kit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Buff Scout is actually super fun and has some real depth to it. So much that it could honestly make its own video. So that's what I'm gonna do. Later. Because I wanted to get this video out by the end of the year. Sorry. Anyway, there's some direct combat techniques for Trolldier. I hope they are helpful and get you lots of gardens. End of video stuff, I do have one announcement to make, and that's that I have merch? For like the first time ever in the 8.5 years that I've had this channel, I actually have merch. There's some pretty cool stuff on there. Some stickers, mugs, shirts. I actually really like this band shirt that shows all the tour locations on the back, and it's just like, oh, there's also a Trolldier-themed athletic department, quote-unquote, collection that's really just loungewear. You know, like sweatpants and stuff. So you can wear it around the house and not have to reveal to people that you bought YouTuber merch. Seriously though, there is some cool stuff in here. All of it is ethically sourced, good quality and all that, and if you want to support me, this is a great way to do so. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed. Buff Scout is up next for the How to Trolldier series, and